My name is Aman Lakhiani. I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia, and now I live in the heart of London, where I run my restaurant, Junsei. After studying culinary arts in the US and Japan, I knew straight away that Japanese food was my passion. In this masterclass, I'm going to show you some of my restaurant's best recipes. Let's get started. For our next dish, we'll be preparing the Oyakodon. Oyakodon is a traditional Japanese dish, which means pear in an egg bowl, and it's a dish of simmered chicken cooked in eggs. So the way we start is we're going to prepare our garnishes. We're going to prepare some coriander leaves. It's really nice just to pick them. And make sure you're not wasting the stems as well. The stems have really good flavor, and while most people throw them away, honestly, it's a huge waste. And in Japan, people really pride themselves on not wasting any part of the ingredients, whether it comes from chicken or vegetables. Everything is to be used. So we just pick the coriander leaves, we set them off to the side. And for the stems, you make sure you just pick them off the leaves, and we chop them into small 2 or 3 centimeter pieces. For the next part of the dish, we're going to be preparing our eggs. The best way to do them is just to crack them into a bowl, and make sure you're lightly whisking them. You don't want to be using a fork or as if you're making an omelet where you're whipping lots of air. You just want to lightly whisk them so that the egg and the yellow and the white are a little bit homogeneous. So this dish, Oyakodon, was actually invented by a restaurant called Tamahide in the 1890s. It's over 200 years old, and this restaurant till now has like maybe a 2.5 hour queue. While spending time in Tokyo at sushi school, I actually wanted to dine at this restaurant so many times, but every time I got there, I saw the line. I couldn't get myself to wait. But finally, before leaving Japan, I knew it was somewhere I had to try, and I'm so glad I did it. Honestly, the food was amazing. So make sure you're just lightly whisking the egg, not trying to force too much air into it, and just like this, it's perfect. So for the Oyakodon, we prepare a simple sauce. The sauce is prepared with soy, sake, and chicken broth. You can use any type of broth you have, and in Japan we usually turn the broth into dashi. Dashi is made by adding kelp to the broth, which is the cornerstone of Japanese cuisine. The kelp adds a lot of umami, which they call the 5th flavor profile, which is just a rich savoriness. And once the stock has been steeped, we add some katsuobushi flakes, we boil it and we strain it, and the sauce is ready once you've added some sake, soy, and just a little bit of sugar. Now, we start with this oyako pan over here. You can use any normal pan to make this dish at home. Just make sure it's quite small so that it creates a nice circumference, and it has a lid as well. So we start by putting the flame on low fire, medium low, and getting it ready. Now, just a little bit of oil in the pan. Make sure we're wiping down. We don't want too much excess oil as well. So while I was in Tokyo, actually at Tamahide, the restaurant is run by a Japanese family, and they've been running it for over 200 years, generations and generations, and they still managed to keep this line. It's really impressive. And the reason that this is so common in Japan is because the Japanese people believe in a way of thinking called Ikigai. Ikigai is actually a way of compartmentalizing your purpose. And in Japan, they find that if you focus on your Ikigai or your purpose, you can actually do the best of anything that you're trying to do. So you can use any piece of chicken, really. This dish is supposed to be easy. We're using some chicken, boneless, skinless chicken thigh here. We're just going to cut it into small cubes, and we're going to have it ready. Just at about this size is perfect. Now, first what we're going to do is we're going to put the pan over the fire, make sure it gets a little bit warm, and we're going to add our chicken into the pan. Make sure you hear a light sizzle, and you just want it to brown all over evenly. You don't want to fully cook it through, as you're going to add the broth and you're going to finish it simmering in the oyako sauce. Make sure you're moving the pieces around. Make sure if it gets too hot or too smoky, you can always lift your pan, move it away from the fire. It's sometimes better than turning the flame down, as it's still continuing to get too much excess heat. So with this dish being over 200 years old, it's actually really authentic and central to Japanese cuisine. And while it did start in Tamahide in Tokyo, it's actually now very popular across the whole country. And people everywhere make this dish. And oyako actually means parent and child, hence the chicken and the egg. And even in Japan, they make this dish with other parts. They even use salmon. They use the salmon roe and the salmon meat as well, calling it a salmon oyakodon. Make sure the broth is added. Yes. So when you're adding the broth, you want to make sure that it's just halfway covering up the chicken pieces and it's lightly simmering. Now while this is going, you can prepare your other garnishes as well. It's really good to have some scallions in it, adds a nice allium note. You just want to use the end of the scallion here. You want to cut off a piece. You want to slice it lengthwise and just cut it into thin strips and refresh it in ice water so it gets nice and curly. Now with the green parts of the onion, it's good just to slice it thinly as a garnish. Put off everything to the side. We're going to go and check on our oyakodon here. It's looking perfect. Make sure all the chicken pieces are moving around. Make sure the sauce is reduced. Now at this stage is where we're going to add our eggs. We're going to make sure our eggs are nicely whisked over here. And we're just going to add it around the pot in a thin stream. This is the perfect time to turn up your pot. We're going to cover it with a lid. We're going to wait about 10 seconds, and we're actually going to let the dish finish from the residual heat of the pan. So while this dish is finishing cooking, we can prepare our rice bowl. I'm going to take some steamed rice over here. I would say that it's best to cook the rice in a rice cooker with equal parts in volume of rice to water. This way it comes out really nice and fluffy. And make sure after you cook the rice, you always remember to fluff it as well so that your grains don't clump. Especially when you're even plating rice in a bowl, it's important not to clump it up too much, as this causes the rice to get sticky and has not a nice mouthfeel. This is perfect. Make sure the rice is evenly mixed and there's some nice air pockets. And now we're going over here and we're going to look at our oyakodon. We're going to check. It should still be a little bit wet, a little bit soupy. This way it's nice and runny as well. We're just going to use a spatula here. We're just going to check the sides, check the bottom, make sure it's nice and runny, and this is looking perfect. The best way to do this is you're just going to come and you're going to slide the egg mixture right over the top of the bowl. Once the egg is on the rice bowl, we're going to finish it off with our garnishes. A little bit of the scallion that we prepared earlier. The coriander stems as well, add a nice touch to it, a nice fragrance. And we finish as well with the curly scallions. Make sure it's evenly spread around so that you get some scallion with each bite. And it's good to finish with nori as well. And a few coriander leaves. And here we have it, the oyakodon.